For more than 600 years, a single empire lived in a near constant state of war. It fought kings and sultans, republics and crusaders, rebels, rivals, and rising European powers. Borders expanded, collapsed, and were rebuilt again and again. Armies marched from the Balkans to the deserts of Arabia. Generations lived and died under the weight of conflict, and yet this empire achieved something almost unheard of in world history. It didn't go broke, because the Ottoman Empire didn't just wage war. It mastered the art of paying for war again and again for centuries. Welcome to financial history, where money and power collide, and where empires don't fall because of swords, but because of numbers. The Ottoman Empire existed from roughly 1299 to 1922. That's longer than Rome, longer than the British Empire, longer than most states we usually call great powers. But its real mystery isn't how long it lasted. It's how an empire that fought almost non-stop avoided financial collapse. In the West, history is often told like this. Empires fall when they lose wars. But wars alone don't destroy states. Budgets do. Logistics do. Bad financial decisions do. The Ottomans understood this very early. Instead of copying the European model of heavy taxation and expensive standing armies, they built something far more efficient, a system where war largely paid for itself. But first we need to understand who the Ottomans actually were. For many Western audiences, the empire exists only as imagery: domes, turbans, palaces, and janissaries. The visuals are familiar. The engine behind them is not. So let's slow down and go back to the beginning. The Ottomans started as a small frontier principality in northwest Anatolia. Their founder Osman was a local war leader with a few thousand fighters and an exceptional sense of timing. As Byzantine authority weakened and Mongol pressure faded, Osman's followers stepped into the vacuum. Those early victories weren't just military successes. They were financial gains. Every conquest brought land, harvests, taxpayers, and revenue. From the very beginning, warfare was not simply an expense, it was a source of income. When the Ottomans captured Bursa in 1326 and crossed into Europe a few decades later, they were no longer a minor power. They controlled the crossroads between Europe and Asia. In medieval terms, that meant controlling the world's trade arteries, merchants traveling from Venice to Persia, caravans moving between Cairo and Budapest, goods flowing from Baghdad to Constantinople. They all passed through Ottoman territory, and every movement was taxed. War requires food, metal, and manpower. The Ottomans didn't necessarily have more of these than their rivals. What they had was something more important: steady cash flow. Silk, spices, timber, sugar, copper, weapons, horses. Trade moved constantly, and the empire took a share every time it did. But revenue alone doesn't explain 6 centuries of survival. What made the Ottomans different was structure. They transformed their army into a self-financing institution. And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood innovations in Ottoman history, the Timar system. Imagine a state trying to eliminate its biggest military expense: salaries. Modern armies cost fortunes: pay, equipment, pensions, logistics. The Ottomans avoided this by refusing to pay most soldiers in cash. Instead, they paid them in rights. A Timar was a tax district. A cavalryman, known as a sipahi, was granted the right to collect taxes from a specific area. In return, he equipped himself, maintained his horse, and appeared for campaigns fully armed, no salary, minimal cost to the central treasury. The results were powerful. The state reduced expenses. Soldiers had a direct interest in local stability. Peasants dealt with predictable authorities. And the empire could mobilize large forces without draining its finances. European states relied on mercenaries and expensive nobles. When the money stopped, loyalty disappeared. Ottoman soldiers remained funded even in peacetime. War didn't strain the system, it activated it, but cavalry was only one part of the equation. The second pillar was the janissaries. They were elite infantry, highly disciplined, professionally trained, loyal only to the state. What made them unique wasn't just their battlefield skill, but how they were created and maintained. Through the devshirme system, boys were taken from Christian communities, educated, converted, and trained by the state. This system was harsh and coercive, and it should never be romanticized. But financially, it achieved something remarkable. The empire avoided the lifetime cost of raising soldiers. That burden was effectively distributed across conquered populations. The state invested in training but acquired fully formed loyal professionals at a fraction of the long-term cost. For centuries, janissaries were restricted from marriage and private business, keeping their loyalty tightly bound to the empire. Together, the Timar cavalry and janissary infantry created a military that was both effective and affordable, and conquest reinforced the system. New territories meant new taxpayers, new trade routes, new ports, and new income streams. Each victory strengthened the financial base for the next campaign. While many European states returned from war poorer, the Ottomans often returned wealthier. Trade control amplified this advantage. The empire sat astride the Bosphorus, the Dardanelles, the eastern Mediterranean, and key caravan routes to Asia. If goods moved between continents, the Ottomans collected a toll. They also relied on state monopolies. Salt, coffee, tobacco, and other essentials were controlled directly by the state, producing reliable revenue. Tribute from semi-autonomous regions added another layer of income, often cheaper than direct rule. For centuries, this system delayed what destroys most empires: debt. The Ottomans largely lived within their means. They expanded without massive borrowing. They avoided dependence on foreign lenders. But no system lasts forever. By the 17th and 18th centuries, global trade shifted to the oceans. European powers industrialized. Land-based trade routes lost their dominance. The Timar system decayed. Local abuse increased. Janissaries gained political power and resisted reform. Eventually, the empire did what it had avoided for generations. It borrowed. In the 19th century, the Ottomans took large loans from European banks at high interest. Debt spiraled. Payments failed. In 1881, control of Ottoman finances was handed to an international commission, dominated by European powers. After 6 centuries of independence, the balance sheet decided the outcome. The lesson is timeless. Empires don't die on the battlefield. They die on the ledger. The Ottoman Empire survived as long as its financial system worked. It collapsed when that system broke. History doesn't repeat itself, but financially, it often rhymes. And when you ignore the numbers, history doesn't forgive. If this changed how you see the past, consider subscribing, because history already knows how this story ends.